I had uncles on both sides of the family that were firemen. One was the chief and one was a captain. I grew up in police stations and fire halls. I had Thanksgiving in a fire hall several times during my youth. Got to ride in fire trucks numerous times. Lost money in more than one round of poker. Saw a couple of middle-aged men slide down the fire pole naked on a bet. So when I found out about the premise of quantum error, I was understandably curious. And then I played it. And I became even more curious. I thought to myself, how did this ever make it past beta testing?
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
First off, there's the title. It's a total fail. Someone should have known better. After all, every major game release in the last 20 years that's had the word quantum in the title has flopped. How it must have felt when the launch week numbers came in, and the employee who chose that title spent his first and last 15 minutes boxing up his coffee cup and stapler. Oh, the shame he must have experienced as he was walked out by security, who was really the owner's nephew. The tears he must have held back as he walked through the lobby and past the janitor, who turned to his friend, the game tester — they have the same salary as janitors — and said,
"He chose poorly."
Anyway, the point I'm making is the title sucks. It really sucks, and probably dissuaded numerous people from even giving the game a second glance. In the least, you should have called it Quantum Burn or Quantum Flame, Backcraft, something to make it more obvious that your game was essentially Kurt Russell in a cosmic horror game. You suck at naming games. Moving on.
It certainly does suck.
Now, prior to actually playing it, I saw a lot of talk online describing it as a failed clone of newer first-person Resident Evil titles. I beg to differ. It's not a failed clone of Resident Evil at all. It's a failed clone of System Shock. Instead of a hacker in the future who gets trapped in a space station run by an insane AI, you're a fireman trapped first in an underground top-secret government facility, and later other places, that's been overrun by the power of a Lovecraftian alien artifact. The game begins with a cutscene in deep space where astronauts on a space station witness a huge whirly-swirly thing barely miss the space station and crash into a nearby moon.
I hate to go all technical on you, but all hands on deck, swirly thing alert!
You then see a landing party approach the landing site, and one of the astronauts appears to be taken over by the crashed whatever the hell it is. Meanwhile, back on Earth, you play as firefighter Jacob, whose brother was recently killed, and he feels a certain way about it.
You killed my family, and I don't like that kind of thing.
The game starts with you having to traverse a firefighter training course that shows you how to use all the snazzy, high-tech firefighting gear you'll be utilizing for the rest of the experience, though not really as much as you'd think. It was my impression that the farther you got into the game, the fewer fires there are for you to put out, which kind of defeats the premise really, but then again, with a shitty name like Quantum Error, you shouldn't really have expected too much better.
How many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man?
Like I said, the game is structured like System Shock. You navigate through narrow corridors and shadowy hallways, collecting as much as you can, doing your best to conserve ammo, finding hidden chambers, and using items to power up your abilities as you move from floor to floor. You'll run into enemies that you're expected to avoid or kill stealthily, but the stealth functionality in this game is ass, so get used to the idea of shooting or meleeing every enemy you see. There are occasional environmental puzzles you must solve to progress forward, like using the jaws of life to pinch off a gas leak, using a fire extinguisher or wall-mounted fire hose to put out a fire, leading employees to safety before your mask runs out of air, that sort of thing. But it all just doesn't work as well as System Shock did, all the way back in 1994. For one thing, every floor is a maze. It was the same in System Shock, sure, but you had an onboard map you could reference to keep track of where you were and where you needed to go. Not in Quantum Error. Oh no. Instead, each floor has one or two rooms that has a map you can look at that shows you where you are, and that's about it. So you better have your cell phone on standby for when you run into one of these maps so you can screen cap it and keep that handy. Also, you are quite limited in where you can save. In fact, you don't even encounter a save room until you get to the first elevator and make your way down to the science lab. From there on, each floor has a room where you can interface with the base's AI and save your game. If you die, you will lose all items and all progress you made since the last time you saved. So get in the habit of backtracking after clearing out rooms and hallways to save your progress. Oh, and while I'm at it, I found this to be of particular interest. When you make it to that science lab, you'll speak to a blonde lady scientist who grants you access to that aforementioned AI. If you look over to your left, you'll see 2 unisex bathrooms. I say unisex because both of them have urinals on the wall. But if you open one specific stall, I believe in the bathroom to the right, you will see an absolutely massive turd laying on the stall floor right next to the toilet. Now, you may have noticed that the entire staff of the science lab is female. That means that one of these young, attractive lady scientists moseyed on into a stall, dropped panty, and then completely missed the bowl by about 5 inches to the left and dropped a Cleveland steamer on the not-so-futuristically tiled floor. Somebody from the Team Kill Media dev team really needs to reach out and explain that one to me.
That is one big pile of shit.
The gunplay, at best, is fidgety. Some of them work fine so long as you've scrimped and saved up your ammo for some of the boss fights, but otherwise you're honestly just better off planting an axe in the enemy's forehead. Everything else sort of works the way it's supposed to, most of the time, I guess, but there is a lot to remember, as each device you use requires different button presses to operate. Thankfully, by default, the on-screen tutorial appears every time you have to check a door for heat, every time you have to use a saw to tear down a wall, every time you have to climb above a hot room and kick the ceiling open to let out steam so the door won't insta-kill you into the backdraft, and so on. There's also first aid minigames such as mouth-to-mouth and CPR, but again, you won't be called upon to use it more than a couple of times, so honestly, I'm kind of unsure why they bothered to include it at all. The storyline borrows from a lot of cosmic horror. It gets more and more Event Horizon-like the further you go. Of course, there's a conspiracy. After you witness one of your team members almost get swallowed by the evil alien artifact thing, you're questioned by 2 members of a clandestine group who claim they're trying to recover the artifact to prevent the government from, accidentally destroying the universe with it. It's just not written very well, and it's certainly not acted well, but I have to admit it caught my attention just enough to keep me interested in where it was going. The music, meanwhile, is totally forgettable, but the sound effects provide an adequate amount of creep if you have the right sound system. Quantum Error gets a few things almost right. Despite it being a real slog to play, I did find myself wanting to continue. I can admit that much. Mostly to see if it could get any more hilariously worse the farther I went in. It was a smaller indie team that appears to have had some money thrown at them, perhaps by Sony themselves, since this was, after all, a PS5 console exclusive. In fact, according to their website, they're an American studio focused on PlayStation that's had 3 games released and 9 games in the pipeline, including the soon-to-be-released spiritual successor to Dino Crisis, Code Violet, and apparently a sequel to this very game called Quantum State. The very thought is giving me a backdraft. Quantum Error gets a 4 out of 7.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!